All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Grafana Pyroscope community call. As you may have heard, the Pyroscope and Flare projects are merging, so we're going to be talking a lot about that today. Yeah, I guess let's start with UI. Eduardo, do you want to talk about our plans regarding Pyroscope UI and adding it to Flare?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so basically, you want to have some kind of feature parity with Pyroscope UI and Flare. So basically, what I'm doing is just copying over, not really copying over, but just trying to use as much as possible from Pyroscope UI into Flare's UI, and doing the required adaptations as needed. I've done for single view. Now I'm starting to work on diff view. Comparison is going to be straightforward, and also the tag selector.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there's also some work that's been happening around bringing Pyroscope features into Grafana flame graph component.
Yeah.
Under,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, so right now, like we decided to use the Pyroscope flame graph instead of what we had in Grafana until now. There are like more features. It's used more and probably a little bit more mature than our flame graph in Grafana right now. So we decided to keep the Pyroscope flame graph as an external library, at least for now, and make some changes to make it a little bit more aligned with Grafana, right? So there will be some changes to the UI itself. We will use the Grafana UI components to style it, and there will probably be maybe some changes to like what kind of data it can consume. Again, to make it work easier inside Grafana itself. So all these changes will be to make it easier inside Grafana, but as mentioned, we will try to keep it as an extra library so other users can like just download it and use it to visualize profiles. And as far as I know, it's already used in some places outside of both like Pyroscope UI and Grafana. So these are kind of like the current plans, and yeah, later on we will try to figure out like how to also port some other bigger features from the Pyroscope UI into Grafana. But right now we don't have a very like specific plan of how we will do that, but that will be coming later on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the overall kind of strategy is we want to make sure that existing Pyroscope and existing Flare users have a good experience upgrading to this new version, so that they can continue using all the same features they've been using before. And that's kind of a recurring theme with both UI, backend, and also agents as well. Yeah, does anyone have any other thoughts on UI migration? Is there any other components we're bringing in? I guess those are mostly the two big ones. So yeah, let's talk about backend a little bit. So in a similar fashion, we want to make sure that again users have a good experience bringing their data into the new Grafana Pyroscope. And so one of the things we did was adding support for Pyroscope ingestion API into what is now Flare, but later is going to be the Grafana Pyroscope project. Anatoly, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know you worked on
that. Yeah. So it basically works like it completely reuses the code from the open source Pyroscope ingest handler, and it adapts like it parses all the Pyroscope supported formats to trees, and then convert trees to pprof, and then passes those pprof to the Flare ingestion pipeline down the line. So yeah, it's like a bit inefficient in a sense that it's like converted multiple times to from trees to pprof, from pprof to bytes, etc. But it kind of works. Yeah, not sure what else to add.
Yeah, so it does work. We tried it. We tried it with one of our dev clusters. We tried sending data from Pyroscope Cloud into what's now a Flare cluster, and that ingest endpoint was able to do all those conversions. Agreed that they're not efficient yet, and I guess that's one thing that we'll be working on soon, kind of reducing the amount of conversions we need to do from one format to another. So yeah, that's going to be coming out soon.
Ooh, there are two side effects I wanted to mention. First is that I drop profiles with profile ID label, so we don't send exemplars there. Like our parser groups trees by label sets, so we accidentally started supporting pprof labels attached to specific samples, not like so like local samples text specific. Yeah, not sure if I explained correctly what I wanted to explain.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, all the like tracing specific profiles are not being stored right now in this in this conversion process. Yeah, we'll that's going to be a big project that we're gonna work on sometime soon. But for the time being, I think exemplar support, the support for tracing integration, is going to be either very limited or is not going to be there at all. And I guess another thing we should talk about is kind of like our overall plan with merging the two projects when it comes to the backend and storage design. Christian, do you want to kind of cover that part?
Yeah. So like I think on a high level, we definitely want to be able to kind of like have a transition while still be able to read the old blocks, I guess, so that we kind of can kind of gradually phase out whatever the old storage will be. So like I think we don't have really kind of any details nailed out, but I think that there's definitely like kind of some ideas like we want to keep around and store symbols a bit separate of where they are right now. So like maybe for longer than the 10 minutes in blocks in OG Pyroscope, or for us it's we in Flare cut blocks every 3 hours, or whenever they reach 1 gigabyte in size. So basically the idea would be like symbols are like changing like very infrequently, and that's kind of why we want to keep them around for longer. And in the same way, we want to potentially be able to kind of store them with a global reference. So reference currently is very local, so a new block will have different references to different symbols. That makes it quite hard to aggregate and look up things, compact blocks together after the ingestion phase, and so we're looking at if we can potentially like have some more global valid way of accessing it, so content addressed hashes potentially. But that's all just ideas. Like I think there's nothing really kind of decided, or so we yeah, I guess on a high level we want to kind of follow like the Cortex style architecture that Mimir, Loki, Tempo have, and yeah, so like I think like basically like have that horizontal scalable version as an open source kind of deliverable within the kind of new Grafana Pyroscope.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the original Pyroscope design was very much non-scalable. It was always running on one machine, and one thing that we're very excited about is making the whole thing horizontally scalable. And yeah, we're gonna do that by bringing in Cortex architecture. And I think that also has a benefit of making it so that people who are familiar with running Loki or Mimir or any other similar projects in production, they would be able to start using Flare, and they would already be familiar with kind of scaling Cortex architecture. So I think that's a big win for the overall community. All right, so that's the backend part. I think the other big component of Grafana Pyroscope is agents, and we should probably talk about our plans there. Anatoly, do you want to talk about? I guess this is pretty similar to the /ingest API that you worked on, right? So, yeah, do you want to talk about kind of the plans for agents in general?
Honestly, I don't know the plan. Like, I don't know if we're going to use like the new /Pyroscope ingest endpoint, or are we going to like teach all the agents to talk to push API Flare. But right now we can just send like just use the new endpoint.
Yeah. So right now it supports both endpoints, right? So we have kind of gRPC based Flare endpoint for sending profiling data, and we recently brought in the Pyroscope /ingest endpoint, and now we kind of have support for both. And so both kind of Flare agents and Pyroscope agents can start sending data. And I think that we tested it with a few different agents, and that mostly works. There might be some inconsistencies in the way we deal with different profile types and application names and things of that nature. And we'll probably be working on kind of standardizing that in the next couple of months. And also making sure that agents can work with authentication methods that are used in Grafana Cloud. I think most of them do support that, but I don't think we tested all of them. So I bet there's some inconsistencies. Because the old Pyroscope Cloud used a special header to do authentications, and in Grafana Cloud it is standard like HTTP basic authentication. Yeah. And so like Go clients, for example, they kind of automatically work with that, but I'm not so sure about some other ones.
And I guess there's also some effort to document, I guess, the examples, how to ship that, or I definitely think we probably could also like work on a way to authenticate similarly if that is really required for a shift. But yeah, I think we haven't discussed it that much in detail.
Yeah. Yeah, and a good point. Documentation is definitely going to be a big part of work on the agents. Currently, yeah, we barely have any explanations on how to send data to Flare or Pyroscope or vice versa. And we'll need to work on that. Another thing that I'm excited about is we might potentially bring support for eBPF profiling into Grafana Agent. There's already support for pulling data from your Kubernetes cluster in Grafana Agent, and we could, in addition to that, add eBPF profiling support so that the agent would use eBPF to get profiling data and send it into Flare/Pyroscope cluster. That could be pretty cool. That's a kind of like a quick way of getting good profiling data across your whole cluster if you're using Grafana agent already. All right, so that's it for the agents part, I think. And yeah, I guess I'll reiterate that the overall goal is to make sure that existing users of both Flare and Pyroscope have a good experience. And that's kind of the overarching theme of what we're working on right now. I guess we could talk about roadmap and kind of the dates. I don't think there's anything that's set in stone yet. But we do have some idea of when we want to deliver some of these things, right? So, for example, end of April, I think we're going to have ability for people to use Pyroscope in Grafana Cloud. So when they create new stacks, they will get like a profiles section, and they will get an endpoint that they could start sending data to, and it will be integrated with Grafana, so they will be able to start seeing data there. Christian, do you want to talk about other things that we're planning for end of April?
So yeah, like or that end of April is basically like a free tier. So like Grafana Cloud has that free tier up to a certain amount of data per month, and yeah, the plan there is to kind of support it only for free tier to get a bit of experience of how should we monitor it, what things can go wrong, to how many tenants we scale, and each of those free tier tenants will be fairly small, I guess, just because we want to support it for forever, ideally, and so currently, like yeah, we were thinking something like don't nail me on that, but like 50 or 100 gigabytes of profiling data per month would be free, and we definitely want to be able to kind of scrape a couple of pods, 1, 2, 3, 4 pods at least, with some reasonable scrape interval. So we won't be able to support all of the regions as of yet. So we will be in 3 regions as of end of April, and then kind of end of April we will kind of have a bit of a silent launch. So it will be enabled for new kind of stack, kind of how we call a new tenant that you create in Grafana Cloud. So new ones will only become provisioned for profiles, and then bit by bit we will kind of add more regions, provision it for everyone as we kind of build up confidence, and I think then I guess going into June there's so we have 2 Grafana conferences a year, like GrafanaCon and ObservabilityCon. Basically, like that's kind of a bit of the kind of deadline we set ourselves, that for GrafanaCon we want to speak a bit more openly about it. Ideally, want to use kind of the Pyroscope name everywhere, and also want to be able to support the APIs kind of transparently. So like currently the data source in Grafana is still called Flare. Like we were a bit cautious of just renaming it and changing the logo, because obviously, like if you're OSS current original Pyroscope user, like it obviously wouldn't work without further work there, and we hope yeah, that until June we can kind of make sure all those rough edges are gone, and at least we can explain that it's connecting to this back end of OG Flare or OG Pyroscope or new Pyroscope, and kind of detect what is available, what is not. And I think that's quite close to, I think, a lot of the UI work in Grafana itself. That will also be closer, I guess, in June than it is end of April.
Yeah, that makes sense. Naming has been one of the kind of harder things throughout this transition. I feel like there's a Flare and Pyroscope everywhere, and yeah, we're still struggling with kind of the naming conventions. But hopefully by June 12th, everything will be Pyroscope and everything will work with everything. So there won't be much of confusion. At least I hope so. So that's the end of our agenda for today. Does anyone have any other agenda items? Anything we forgot to talk about? We talked about UI, backend, agents, our eventual goal, and the roadmap. Anything else that could be useful for the community?
So I might have a topic, but that could be turn out to be a bit of a controversial one. Like, I don't know, with applications versus the kind of full dimensional labels. I think that's very different, I guess, in the two products. And I wonder how everyone feels, how we can kind of make that, like, obviously, like, we want to make it smooth and we know the difference exists, but like, yeah, just wonder if people have ideas.
I think the convention that's currently used in Flare makes a lot of sense in context of like greater product suite that Grafana offers. The fact that you can reuse the same labels between Loki and Flare / Pyroscope, I think is very nice. So I think there's definitely value in kind of keeping that consistent. One area where this is kind of getting tricky is for existing Pyroscope users. How do we kind of consolidate the two schemas, right? And I think what we're doing right now in /ingest endpoint, the one that Pyroscope uses, is that one requires you to specify a name, and we take that name and we set it as one of the labels that we then ingest into Flare backend. So now you have ability to use this special Pyroscope app label as just one other label. I don't know if it's I could see this user experience being kind of confusing to people coming from Pyroscope. So I would love to continue kind of thinking, looking for ways to bridge that and make it kind of like more straightforward / convenient. But I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe it will just come down to us playing with it more and finding ways to improve it. I don't know. What do others think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think like the UI can do kind of basically look for that app label to create kind of the experience as consistent as possible. And yeah, like I don't know what the best approach is if it's not there. Like maybe then it needs to kind of come from the other label sets or just display the full label set. Like I think that probably like not super easy, and I guess like also like tags, I guess is what Pyroscope currently calls labels. So I think we also have a bit of an interesting citizen in our Grafana lab side. Like, so Tempo, for example, Tempo has no labels, I guess. I guess the way the hotel spec or whatever, whoever had the first model for tracing. So they didn't call it label. I think it's called resource tags as well, maybe. And so maybe we can get some ideas there. Like, I don't really know right now what happens when you switch from logs to tracing, if it even gets converted correctly on the UI side. But I think it's definitely like kind of maybe there's some already solved problems in that space.
Yeah. My thoughts are that we can just, make this label configurable. For example, currently we use our reserved name label as metric name in Prometheus. In Flare, when we ingest via the Pyroscope ingest, endpoint, we had the label you mentioned, right? Pyroscope app or something like this. And so by letting users to configure or to override this label name, we can kind of build this bridge between our data models, and that should be fully backward compatible, I guess.
Yeah, I agreed on the kind of part about making it user, allowing users to kind of specify the name, but we should probably come up with some sort of a good default way of doing it, right? Like a lot of users will come into this not knowing that that there's this change in the first place, and we should probably make it as kind of straightforward for them as possible. So some reasonable defaults would probably be good.
So what is the default in the kind of Pyroscope?
We use it like reserved label name, like __ name $_ again.
No, but like if let's say I just compile something and I don't fill out the application label, is it then using the process name, or is it using?
It's going to be considered as a misconfiguration edit 1.4.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, all of the agents require you to specify application names. So, so good news, we always have it. So there's that. But yeah,
that's true for Pyroscope API. And I guess we are going to support Flare API, where that's not the case, and we don't have this application name label. Things are getting more complicated, but still, I do believe that it's possible to somehow, either derive this label or find out.
So what are common used label app names then that users set? Like, is it like namespace minus port name,
container name? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how people use it right now. Yeah.
And that's, I guess, like that is always a kind of like if people are not happy even with the Flare format, they then can use that special application label, I guess, overriding our default behavior. So like I think it's definitely something we could solve. I feel.
Yeah.
We should maybe explicitly list all the supported scenarios. I mean, like data ingested via Pyroscope API, data ingested via Flare API, and data queried. And I'm sure it's possible to find a way to support both scenarios.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Any other thoughts, ideas? Big topics we haven't discussed. If not, I guess we can end earlier. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. Everyone,
All right.
see you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.